Welcome back to Zoetopia, and today we have our first ever live edition of Classic Literature Club. And of course, we are talking about none other than Franz because I do have a lot of thoughts, but I also just want to make sure that it's structured for you. Like, I want this to be a good video that you can use. So let's just get into it. So what is The Castle? The Castle is a novel published after Franz Kafka's death, and it came out in, was it 1926? Yes, in 1926. It's part of like that era where he was writing like his big novels, like The Castle, The Trial, America, and they were published. I think America was the only one he finished, but The Trial also was published after his death by his friend Max Brod, who was like basically the leader in the Jewish German intellectual circle in Prague, which sounds more niche than it actually was. So, The Castle is about Kay, just as in The Trial, who is like a guy who comes to a village to be a land surveyor, and he tries to get a hold of the count because he's working for this village, but it's like impossible. So yeah, he basically is just met with a bunch of bureaucratic obstacles and just confusion, and like the way to the castle is like a maze. Like, there's supposed to be this way, but it's impossible, and it's like super snowy all of the time, and so he never physically gets there. And then also people are like trying to hinder him, like, who are you? Like, some guy just comes into our village, you are nothing, like, you are worthless, or you have less say than our dogs, why are you trying to get into the castle? The castle is very exclusive. And he's like, but I'm hired to be here and do this, what is up? So yeah, people are like, ugh, like looking sideways at him. They don't even like let him, like the first night he comes there, he's not allowed to have a room at the inn. He's just like sleeping there on some bench, even though there are rooms available, but he's just not good enough. Yeah, it says like Kay becomes entangled in a web of confusion, misunderstandings, and frustrations. And he's just like, why am I here? Why? Because he was asked to come there, so he doesn't understand what has happened. See, yeah, obviously this is a surreal and absurd book. It's Kafkaesque. So it deals with very real problems of alienation, isolation, discrimination, the modern world, this meaningless of the modern world, and just like invisible obstacles. But it does all of this in a very surreal way, and the book reads like a fever dream, like maybe even more so than The Trial. Because at least The Trial has a clear beginning, middle, and ending, or at least an ending. This, just as with The Trial, he hadn't written the whole thing before he died, but with The Trial, he wrote the last chapter. With this, it just ends mid-sentence. And so yeah, it doesn't have a clear ending. Yeah, okay, short summary. Like I said, Kay arrives in the village. He's supposed to be a land surveyor. He tries to get a hold of the count, but he can't, so he wants to wait till the morning, and he's at one of the inns, but he's not giving a room, he just sleeps there. And he also, like, these two guys are presented to him as his assistants, and he's like, first of all, didn't ask for assistance, second of all, who are these people? And they're two men that he's supposed to have as his assistants, and they're so similar to him that he just calls them the same name. And as Kay is being discriminated in the village, he is abusing them, so it's like this cycle of abuse. Then this messenger boy named Barnabas comes and has this like message to Kay from a super important official, Clam. So Kay is like, okay, I am being recognized. But unfortunately, like, it doesn't really go any further than that. And he is taken to Barnabas's house. He thinks he's going to the castle. He ends up at Barnabas's house, and then again they end up at like a different inn because Barnabas's sister works there. And there, the first night he meets Frida, who he falls in love with, like a barmaid that is the mistress of Clam, the person that Barnabas gave him a letter from. So he feels like she can help him get into the inn. So he sort of, get into the castle. So he sort of seduces her very purposely, but then he ends up falling in love with her because she's showing him some sort of relational thing that's like, she's not just looking sideways at him. So they get engaged. And the mayor, because eventually he gets a hold of the mayor, and the mayor's like, we don't need a land surveyor. I don't even know why you're here. There's some wrong bureaucratic stuff, but while you're here, we don't want you to starve. So we can't pay you, but we can give you a roof over your head and some food if you work as a school janitor. So he, Frida, and 2 assistants move into the school to do janitorial work, and without pay. Then sort of at the end, Frida has a affair with one of the assistants who turns out to be her old schoolmate, and Kay breaks up with her. Though I think maybe they weren't supposed to end up together again at the end. I'm not entirely clear on that because the book ends. And yeah, this sounds like a nothing burger, and it's true. Like, the book is structured to be unstructured and just pointless. The whole point is that he never reaches the castle, he never gets a hold of Clam. That is like the point, that it is pointless. And I think more will be explained when I go into the character overview than in the summary itself, because I just cut a lot of the filler up. But there are a lot of important characters. So, character overview. First of all, we have our protagonist, Kay, who is very determined to get into the castle. He's very confused about the village. He doesn't have a backstory or anything, so we don't know like who his mom is, I feel like he's emotional, or that he's very like searching for connection, or it takes any connection. He falls in love with Frida, and also like I thought he fell in love with Barnabas, honestly, because he was just so overwhelmed to find someone who was nice. And Barnabas is like very a twink, so. And I also read Kay as very manipulative. Just as all the other people in the village, he has his own agenda, and he's willing to like lie to children with sick moms, to get his results, so very manipulative. And Frida, whom he falls in love with, plays naive, but she's very manipulative as well. Their whole relationship is basically them like saying that they love each other, but then going behind each other's backs, caring most about themselves, and manipulating each other. Him in a more like hard and masculine way, and her in a very like sneaky way. The assistants are very interesting because when Kay meets them, they first seem like very young men, but when he meets them again after he's like abused them, and one of them comes back to say like, we've reported you to the castle and he's there right now, he looks like an old and tarnished man. So yeah, and they also seem very young and naive when they looked young, but then when they're old, turns out they're more cunning and observant, in that because it didn't seem like they cared about the abuse, or it seemed like they laughed everything off, but actually they were formulating like something to bring to the castle, and they were very serious about it, and one of them is like still in Kay's fiance over it, Clam, the official that Kay gets a letter from through Barnabas, is like the king of the castle. He is the big man that everyone wants a piece of, and he is a schlarch. He has he recruits different women at whatever time suits him to be his mistress, you know? So even Frida's mom was his mistress for a couple of days. So he's like always sleeping, but somehow he also has this insatiable sexual appetite, I guess. So strange. Although we can't be sure that he actually has a sexual relation to these women, but he just wants a piece of them somehow. And he's mentioned by almost every single character in the book, but yet he never really appears. Kay just sees him through a keyhole, or he thinks he sees them. A lot of people think they see him, but people have different recollection of what he looks like, so they think maybe different men that kind of look like him are hired to pretend to be him, just to make some sort of appearance, like so people can like think they see him in the street and like care. I don't know. Barnabas is, like I said, like subservient messenger boy that actually shows Kay some respect and kindness, and his family does as well. They take in Kay, and Olga, Barnabas's oldest sister, also really shows Kay kindness and is actually kind of crushing on him. And she is basically the only person who tells Kay, like, okay, this is what's going on, this is what I know. So she really actually tries to give him some sort of information that is valuable. Amalia is the youngest sibling in Barnabas' family, and she is sort of aloof and proud, which is interesting because their family is in a really bad spot because of something she did. She didn't really do it. This gross politician, or something, like one of the people who run the castle, had a letter sent to her where he basically requested her presence because he wanted to do like unspeakable sexual things to her, and she tore up the letter. And since that, no one wants to talk with them, no one wants to do business with them, and they were one of the most important families in the village. They had this like business where they I think they made like shoes and clothes and stuff like that, so they were really important, but now no one wants anything to do with them because she ripped up the letter, which is ridiculous, but as we know, like Me Too and everything, very typical. So actually pretty realistic. So yeah, that is the plot, and those are the characters. So what is this book really about? I went into I went over a little bit of it. It's really, like I said, about isolation, a lot of it. Just shown it like, it's very cold there. There's a lot of snow, and the people are cold, and no one really wants to talk to Kay, and everyone who talks to him, mainly except for Barnabas' family, tries to like hone in this thing of, you're not as good as us, like we don't respect you. And also just how many obstacles are in our way sometimes completely randomly, you know, and how hard it can be to work within the system. And yeah, like I said, loneliness, confusion, isolation. He doesn't really get why it is what it is, and you can see him really like clinging on to Frida for no reason, not because she's special, not because he actually loves her, but because she sleeps with him and she says nice things to him and she's close, and there's this kind of feeling that someone is showing him a little bit of affection, or actually respects him, or wants to be with him in some way, and that there's some warmth in this cold place, even though it's not real. And yeah, like I said, the absurdity of the modern world, like, it does not make sense that if you're there to work and like these are the people you have to report to, that you have to go through all of these steps to report, like you're supposed to report to these people, you don't have to go through all these steps, but a lot of times that is what it's like, you know? Things are just hard and confusing for no reason. Also, not the biggest things, but if you want to look right at the surface, We see a lot of things, like I said, about bureaucracy, and then also abuse of power, like hiring someone to be a land surveyor, saying, oh, we don't need you, but you can be a school janitor for free so you don't starve, so your fiance doesn't starve. That is power abuse, and the whole thing is just full of it. Ruining someone's entire family because someone doesn't want to degrade themselves for you, that is power abuse. There's a lot of power abuse and very strange dynamics in this book, and I don't think I've ever read a healthy relationship in Kafka, which makes sense. Kafka came from a family where he loved and adored his mom and was terrified of his father. Like, he grew up with very strange family dynamics and just strained relationship to people in that way. I think also one things that are most interesting here is not like the bureaucracy and the power and abuse in general, but more of the discrimination and the systemic exclusion, because Kafka, like I said, was from a Jewish environment, and as he grew older, he grew more and more conscious of the discrimination of the Jews. And I think that a lot of people coming from a minority background, when you keep that in mind, can read The Castle and really just feel like, oh yeah, that is, yeah, like, he can't get a room at the inn, no one really wants to help him, people, even if he's needed, they don't want to need him, they want to make it feel like, oh, we really wish you weren't here, and getting last in line, and just like being there trying to make something work, but not being given a fair chance, you know? And even if you don't look at the systemic exclusion and discrimination, just how small a person is in a big, big modern bureaucratic world, and like your problems or your goals doesn't really matter to the system. Like, getting help, getting results can be result of your skin color or your sex or your age or whatever, but it can also be completely random depending on someone's day. Like, you know, statistically, if you have a judge and the judge is like deciding to give people pardons or deciding to reduce your sentence or whatever, and the exact same concept if you have a teacher giving grades, the higher you are in like the bunk they're going through, the better results will be for you. The more positive they are, the more generous they are. And as you're getting to the low part of the bunk, and I was bunk the pile, as you're getting to the low part of the pile, as they're getting tired, as it's nearing the end of the day, it's like they have their own personal problems, they just want to get home, this chance of you getting pardoned, of you getting a lower sentence, of you getting an A is just like reducing, and it's entirely random. And that's because people are people, but we are running a society like it's a machine, but the parts are people. So this other thing in the book is that, yeah, he has relationships to people, but most of them are just super inauthentic, and like every conversation he has to overthink it, talk to someone else about it, get like 1,000 different point of views, because everyone has their own agenda. There's no like, hey man, what is this? It's always like, oh, you asked me a question, let me spin this in a way that can help me with my personal bureaucratic problem that I have with the castle and clan. Yes. And that is all of the time. So, what are my thoughts about this? It is a weird book, and I didn't like it as much as The Trial, but I still liked it. I think, like, and people call this like an anti-novel because it is kind of like a novel, you know. It's 304 pages. It has chapters, it has like a beginning, everything, but like it's not structured as a novel. It isn't. It has a beginning, but it doesn't really have a middle and it doesn't really have an end. There are obstacles, but there are no solution, and what follows isn't necessarily natural. It's just like random, almost like a real life. It's like if you took the events of real life and put it in a book, but just a weird part of your day or your week. Because he is just going around like a real person, like, okay, what if I ask this? What if I ask that person? What if I try this? What if I do that? And it's not structured as in like, okay, if he does this, this, and this, then that can happen, and then that can happen, and then we can get to the end of the book. It's more like, yeah, in real life, where you're like, okay, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this, but it doesn't necessarily make sense or great at like a cinematic or a way that's like captivating in that sense, you know. And it doesn't have conclusion. It just, what is the last thing that, I think this one ended a little bit different because I think they ended it before the half sentence. Kay was already in the hall and Gerstacker was clutching at his sleeve again when the landlady shouted after him, "I'm getting a new dress tomorrow. Perhaps I shall send for you." This isn't that sentence that has any deep meaning, like, it has no meaning, really. It's just a part of the book. It's like, you know, a random thing you read in a chapter and then there's another sentence. But there's not another sentence because he died. But if you enjoy surrealism, if you enjoy commentary on the modern world, on bureaucratic processes, if you want to read a book that gives a good insight into isolation, loneliness, the human condition, discrimination, without being so like on the nose and like talking about it, or if you just want to read something weird, then this is the book for you. And I feel like to have a well-rounded understanding of classics, and especially like modern classics, then Kafka is a must. And if you're not the biggest fan, at least read The Trial, which I have several videos on that are linked in the description. But The Castle, it definitely has its place, and psychologically it's very interesting to see, especially like how relationships between men and women and stuff are written here also. I could definitely go more in on that. Like you said, the whole thing with Amalia, where her family was ruined, is very indicative of how we still treat women today. We're with the Me Too movement. It's their careers, not the other person's career. And then also you have Kay's relationship to Frida, which was super strange because, like, first of all, yes, he started a relation with her because she belonged to a powerful man, but then also, like, the sex scenes were grotesque. Like, they weren't, not like 50 Shades of Grey, and they weren't descriptive, but they were like gross. They were like, oh, we cling to each other's faces like two hungry dogs trying to bite each other. Like, it was gross. So his view on this is interesting. And if you want me to do a more in-depth video on any part of this, not the summary, read the book, but a character analysis instead of just a character overview, or more in the themes or specific themes, or more for a thorough review, then I would be open to that. This is mainly just like an overview of the book, basically, like if you want to read it, or just if you read it and you want to refresh it, like especially if you're writing an assignment on it and you need a refresher and a different take. But I would definitely be open to doing a more like thorough investigation, some part of it. That being said, we have now done another classic literature club video, but this time like alive, and that is so fun and exciting. And I'm reading Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky now, which is another one of my favorite authors, and so I'm definitely gonna do a stream on that also, so you can look forward to that. And take care, and I'll see you soon.